Soil. Part of the Earth's topography. It's the planet's fragile skin that anchors all life on Earth. It is comprised of countless species that create a dynamic and complex ecosystem and is among the most precious resources to humans. It is what sustains a farmer's livelihood and nurtures crops that feed our planet. But what exactly is it made of? In the rapidly changing world, what changes is our soil undergoing? What is topsoil erosion, and what dangers does it pose for us as a species? More importantly, can it be reversed? These are some of the questions that we will try to get the answers to in this series, where we tackle issues that affect local communities, global economies, and everything in between. This is Grow Light.
When you hear the word farm, it brings up the image of the classic red barn set against the background of the blue sky.
Chickens cluck and peck at the ground, a rooster perched on the fence crowing to greet the new day. Cows graze lazily in a nearby pasture, their soft lowing mixing with the hum of bees visiting colorful wildflowers that dot the meadow. A tractor, parked beside a neatly stacked woodpile, hints at the day's work ahead. This idyllic image, seemingly straight out of a Thomas Kincaid painting, simply put, no longer exists. It's a vestige of a bygone era that may never come back. The harsh reality is that the 21st century farms in the Western world harken a more dystopian memory aligned with the smokestack dotted skyline of Dickensian 19th century England. Large silos belting smoke 24/7, chickens and cows packed tightly into rows upon rows of cages or enclosures, and of course, heavy-duty machinery such as this. But more on this later. In the middle of the 20th century, population growth rates at an all-time high and a burgeoning middle class with increased disposable income, there was a massive increase in the demand for consumer goods. The 1950s and the 1960s saw a surge in the purchase of automobiles, household appliances, and of course, food and produce. To keep up with this increased demand, American farmers needed a way to increase production, and fast. And perhaps no other agricultural innovation symbolized this tectonic shift in scale than the combine harvester. When Hiram Moore, an American farmer and inventor, built and patented the first combine harvester back in 1835, he could not have foreseen the extent to which his invention would revolutionize Western agriculture. A machine that was capable of reaping, threshing, and winnowing cereal grain, early versions were pulled by horse, mule, or ox teams. The modern combine harvester is light years removed from the first version, but it has been the primary catalyst for transforming the American farm from the idyllic red barn setting to the Amazon-style warehouses that dot America's heartland.
Over the past 5 decades, these mammoth machines have changed the face of American agriculture. They have the advantage of speed, efficiency, and reduced labor costs. But they come at a steep price, which can be summarized in 3 points.
1. Size. Combine harvesters are large machines. They are not meant for accessing small fields or plots of land. This has driven aggressive consolidation of small farms into mega farms and has essentially made small farms commercially unviable. 2. Limited versatility. Combine harvesters are designed to harvest specific grain crops such as wheat and corn and are not effective for harvesting vegetables or fruit crops. This has resulted in the changing of American dietary habits.
Fresh fruits and vegetables are often more expensive to farm than other types of crops that end up in processed food.
The third and most visible is environmental impact. The use of combine harvesters can result in increased soil erosion and reduced biodiversity. as the removal of crop residues and the compacting of the soil can have negative impacts on the environment. For example, the removal of crop residues can lead to soil erosion and reduced soil fertility, as the residues play an important role in maintaining soil structure and retaining moisture. Which raises the question, what is soil and why is it important? On the surface, and no pun intended, it seems like an absurd question. I mean, everyone knows what soil is, or at least we think we do. It's on the ground, and things grow out of it. So why does it matter if the top layer gets blown away by wind or gets compacted by heavy machinery? What kind of bad things can happen if these events come to pass? For the answer to this question, we spoke with Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the director of the Rutgers Soil Testing Laboratory in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Thanks for sitting down with us today. What exactly is soil and what is it made of?
There's a wide range of types of soil, but predominantly mineral component, usually in the range of 95% mineral, meaning broken down from rocks. Okay, there are different size fractions of these pieces of rock. If it's less than 2 millimeters in size, we consider it soil. So there's the three size fractions, sand, silt, and clay. Organic matter is another important component of most soils, usually in the range of 1 to 7% organic matter in most terrestrial soils, unless you're in a wetland kind of situation where if the soil is wet, that decreases the decomposition rate of the organic matter, so you can accumulate more organic matter in those soils. But again, most terrestrial soils across our landscape are primarily mineral. The organic matter, even though it's a relatively small fraction by weight, these percentages I'm indicating are by mass weight. Even though it's a very small percentage, it's very critical to the health of the soil, the health and the quality of the soil. Yeah, absolutely. So organic matter adds a lot of water holding capacity, nutrient holding capacity, nutrient availability. It also contributes to the whole biology of the soil. It supports all the organisms in the whole food chain, the food web within the soil. And so that organic matter continually contributing to the soil quality, to the soil sustainability, right? Resilience of the soil over time is really important. And then, you know, what we've seen from past management is that any great disturbance of the soil decreases the organic matter content of the soil and breaks down the structure of the soil. And so that organic matter is very important for helping to maintain the stability of the soil, aggregation of the soil, and which is important for things like aeration, water movement, drainage, as well as retention in the soil. So you're not going to change the sand, silt, and clay percentages too much. That's considered one of the soil properties that isn't very manageable. You know, you can't change it very easily. But by adding organic matter to it, you can make it more suitable for different crops, for a wider range of crops. And ironically, it also goes for very sandy soils. Adding organic matter to very sandy soils can also make them better. And so in different ways, right? So for very sandy soils, that organic matter adds nutrients that they wouldn't normally have or retain very well as water holding capacity. It's one of the problems of very sandy soils. Right. But with very clay soils, adding that organic matter is really important for helping to create the structure of the soil. Gotcha. You know, with clay soils, you tend to have problems with drainage or susceptibility to erosion or susceptibility to compaction. And so having a good organic content and that biological activity within the soil helps to create the structure in the soil and allowing that exchange of gases and water from the soil to the atmosphere and to the plant. That's a good question. It depends a lot on the soil. For each individual element, there is an optimal range. It depends on how we're extracting the nutrients to measure them. And so if all of those elements are in that optimum range, then you have that optimum situation where we understand at that point that the plant isn't going to suffer from any deficiency. The pH can affect the availability. Even if that nutrient is in the soil, it may not be available if the pH is out of range, either too high or too low. In acidic soils, aluminum becomes more soluble. Many soil minerals contain aluminum, and when aluminum becomes soluble, it can damage the roots, prevent root extension, permeation of the roots through the soil.
Right.
Okay, so the acidity can indirectly reduce uptake of nutrients just because it's it's allowing the aluminum to prevent root growth. And some of the nutrients, or elements that we consider nutrients, can be detrimental if they get to too high of a concentration as well. One of the things is that organic matter factor. As I said, organic matter being very important to soil health, and we need to try to maintain that. And in general, disturbance of the soil that often comes with agricultural practices can help break down that organic matter or contribute to decomposition of the organic matter. And with the warmer temperatures, that's going to increase the decomposition rate of the organic matter in the soil. It allows greater activity of the microbes or other organisms in the soil to break down that organic matter. Can argue that with higher CO2 in the atmosphere, we might get more plant production. At the Soil Testing Lab, it was traditionally focused on farmers to help farmers guide their amendments to maximize production of their crops. But over time, the population of New Jersey has changed, and we now serve as many residential customers as farmers. We serve anybody that wants their soil analyzed for fertility, for example, focusing on nutrients and pH and other important soil properties for production and management. This is where we would log in the samples. We accept samples here, and they go into a drying cabinet. Has already been sieved out. It helps to homogenize the sample as well, measure out for our testing purposes. This is a sedimentation test that we do to measure sand, silt, and clay percentages of soil. Measuring the pH of the soils one by one, and the sand has very low buffering capacity, which means it doesn't resist the change in pH. It is very rapidly changeable, whereas a clay soil has a high buffering capacity and is harder to change. And so that determines how much limestone is needed in order to raise the soil pH to a certain degree. Well, we do an extraction of the soil. Okay. So what goes into this instrument is just a solution. Okay. That's of the nutrients that have been extracted from the soil. It all goes directly into the computer. This instrument is controlled by the computer, and all the data from this instrument goes back to the computer.
And what's the argon used for?
That's the carrier.
So, Doctor, thank you for your time today. Thank you for giving us a tour of the lab, and we look forward to your research insights in the future. And so thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a native of Ohio, so my first education in soil science was at The Ohio State University. I studied agronomy there and was naturally pulled towards the soil science side of agronomy. I became concerned about soil conservation and preservation of soils. I wanted to understand the processes of soil erosion and how we could minimize that risk. I came to Rutgers over 30 years ago. I worked a little bit in soil microbiology, started teaching as well basic soils courses, and eventually got in this position of leading the soil testing laboratory.
When we first bought this farm 3 years ago, we invested in this tractor which comes with a tiller attachment. But since then, the only time the tiller gets any use is when we are breaking new ground to expand the garden. And once that is done, the tiller pretty much sits in the shed for the entire season. No-till farming has proven to be environmentally friendly without compromising yield. More importantly, it preserves the topsoil by a creative use of cover crops and permaculture such as fruit trees. Because once you lose it, it's never coming back. I hope you found this video educational and useful. I'll see you on the next one.